Hey you guys, it's Teresa and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be filming my June wrap-up. So without further ado, let's just get in the video. So for those of you guys who don't know, June was kind of my rereading month. I wanted to take things a little slow since, life was kind of picking up really fast. So I didn't want to have to necessarily read new information and try to find a way to make that interesting for you guys and write all this fun stuff for a review. So I decided to make it a rereading month, and I did do a couple of vlogs on it until kind of my mental health took a dip, in which case I had to stop for the sake of my mental health. But I will be doing more reading vlogs. So that's kind of it for that little introduction, but let's just get into the books. The first book on this list isn't so much like a book as it is a poetry collection. Yes, it's a poetry collection, and that is The World's Wife by Carol Ann Duffy. Now, I've had this book on my radar for a hot minute. I saw it in one of my favorite booktubers' poetry collections because she loves her poetry. And then my best friend actually recommended the book because she had to read it for her classes back when she was still in secondary school in the UK. So I finally ordered it and picked it up, and it was great, and I loved it. But for those of you guys who don't know, it's just a collection of poetry that basically talks about everything from a female perspective. So you have Mrs. Lazarus, King Kong, Mrs. Midas, Frau Freud, the Devil's Wife herself, Salome, Circe, Medusa, and all this kind of stuff here. So it was really interesting to read. I read it in a couple of hours and then reread it again the next day just to solidify all the poems that I really loved. And I would talk about the poems that I did enjoy, but I don't want you guys to pick it up and have the expectation that these poems that I have mentioned were super amazing and super great and then have you guys be disappointed. So I'm just going to leave it with I rated it a 5 out of 5 stars. I thought that all the poetry was great and wonderful, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was so wonderful to read this kind of perspective. And I wish that that I had picked it up sooner. It's just I just like it. So I would definitely recommend it if you guys want to get into more poetry. It's not super modern, I don't think. It's she wrote this around the 90s. But so it's modern but not modern. But I would still recommend it if you guys are looking for more of a feminist kind of reading of history and all of the mythology in there. The next book on this list is where my rereading month starts, and that is The Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, this follows Jem, Will, and Tessa as they kind of figure out the wrongdoings of the Shadow World. Tessa comes from America and is pulled into it only to find out she is not exactly human. So I definitely enjoyed it, but however, this has kind of been my problem with some of Cassandra Clare's earlier writing, is that she's not only very wordy, but she uses a lot of unnecessary words. I think as I was reading, I would go through in my mental little editor head and start cutting out words that she definitely did not need. And I know that this is kind of how the writing style is very much telling of the time. I think that there are ways that you can still portray you having seemed like you were writing this in the time period, but not necessarily having to, but still being concise is what I'm trying to say. So I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars, and I would definitely reread this again. Just still, that writing style is just, eh. The next book on my wrap-up is the second book in this series, and that is Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. Now, I can't go much in depth in this other than the fact that, it's the second book, and it's just going more in depth of every point of heartbreak and whatnot. I did have a moment, though, where I realized that they did Jem really dirty in the cover, because aside from the aquatic theme, I don't know if you can see that, the color scheme, they pulled the color of his hair all awkward, so it looks like a weird fin, and then his cane looks like a trident, and my son deserved better. But I also gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Again, same thing. She's just wordy, and a lot of the word use is unnecessary, honestly. And I could have gone without it. And sometimes, I think at this point, I was getting annoyed with it, and it just got really jarring really fast, and I was just not having it. The next book on my wrap-up is the last series of this trilogy, and that is Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. While Cassie's writing still did remain very wordy and unnecessary, I thought that how she had written the characters and their progression and how well they had grown, as well as the plot and the heartbreak, I literally was in tears by the end of it. kind of overstepped the dislike I had for her wordiness. So 5 out of 5 stars, and definitely would recommend this series. The last book on this in this wrap-up, I don't know why I want to keep saying on this wrap-up. I'm not putting it on anything. But in this wrap-up is Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. Now, this is also a reread, but I haven't read this series in a long time, since middle school. I stopped reading with the second book. Not because I didn't like it, but because I had lost track of the series as a whole. And then he started coming out with more books, and I just got really overwhelmed and didn't pick it up. But I think now he's finally done with the series. And it's adjacent series, so I'm going to pick it up again. But I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it so much. I forgot how much Percy's sassiness had influenced me throughout the years. Like, I just protect Percy, but also at the same time, I want to be a child of Poseidon. Like, why can't I control the water and heal from the water and just feel more at home in the water and breathe underwater? Like, how unfair is that? But other than that, I enjoyed this. I can't wait to read the second book. We'll find the second book and then read it. But that is it for my June wrap-up. I hope you guys enjoyed the reread month that I kind of had. I definitely did. If you guys have read any of these books and want to talk about them, leave them in the comments below, as long as any other videos you might want to see. Other than that, I will see you guys on Saturday. Yeah. Subscribe, hit like, and subscribe. I try to upload every Saturday and Wednesday. Other than that, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.